The feral children. Since the dawn of civilization, we have wondered, are we born human, or is it something we learn? Legends tell of kings who locked infants in silence to find the first language. But history gives us a much darker reality. We are not just exploring tragedy, we are exploring the critical period, the window of time where the soul can either be forged or lost forever. Today, we are descending into the archives of the lost. From the streets of Moscow to the boarded-up windows of Los Angeles, we are uncovering the stories of those who fell through the cracks of humanity. I am Reveela, and these are the 5 primal orphan cases who almost forgot how to be human. Case 1. Oxana Malaya, the girl from the kennel, Ukraine, 1991. In a small village in Ukraine, a neighbor called the authorities about a young girl they had seen running through the fields. But she wasn't playing. She was hunting. When the police arrived at the Malaya family farm, they did not find an 8-year-old child in the house. They found her in the kennel. How does a 3-year-old girl end up in a dog kennel? The answer is a chilling testament to human neglect. Oksana's parents were struggling with severe alcoholism. One night, they simply forgot she was outside. Cold, terrified, and seeking any source of warmth, the toddler crawled into the kennel with the family's dogs. The dogs did what the humans would not. They shared their food, they shared their heat, and over the next 5 years, they shared their identity. Oksana stopped trying to stand. She stopped trying to speak. Her world narrowed down to the hierarchy of the pack, food, sleep, and survival. By the time she was rescued at age 8, Oksana's transformation was nearly total. She did not walk. She galloped on her hands and feet. She did not use her hands to eat. She used her tongue to lap up water and her teeth to tear at raw meat. Most hauntingly, she had lost the human capacity for complex emotion. Doctors observed that her senses had heightened. Her sense of smell was acute. Her hearing was attuned to the slightest rustle in the grass. She had become a biological bridge, a human frame inhabited by the spirit of a canine. Oksana was taken to a home for the mentally disabled. She was taught to walk upright. She was taught to speak. But the critical period we mentioned earlier, for Oksana, that window had slammed shut while she was in the kennel. Today, as an adult, she can speak, but her speech is flat, lacking the nuance of human connection. She remains a permanent resident of a care facility. She survived the wild, but the wild never truly left her. She is our first proof that while you can take the girl out of the kennel, you can never fully take the kennel out of the girl. Case 2. Vanya Yudin, the aviary of silence. In 2008, social workers in Volgograd, Russia, entered a 2-bedroom apartment for a routine wellness check. What they expected was a case of hoarding. What they found was a biological anomaly. In the center of the room stood 7-year-old Vanya Yudin. He was surrounded by dozens of birds, but he was completely alone. His mother had treated him as just another pet, feeding him but never speaking a word to him. For 7 years, the only language Vanya had ever heard was not Russian. It was the frantic, melodic calls of his feathered cellmates. Vanya had undergone a process called sensory mirroring. Humans are social mimics. We reflect the world around us to survive. Because Vanya's mother ignored him, he turned to the only social structure available, the aviary. He did not speak. He did not cry. When he was frustrated, he chirped. When he was excited, he flapped his arms. To Vanya, he was not a boy trapped in a cage. He was a bird trapped in a human body. Why did Vanya chirp instead of talk? It comes down to neuroplasticity. During the first few years of life, the brain's auditory cortex is like a blank recording. It maps the frequencies it hears most often. Vanya's brain had tuned itself to the high-decibel, rapid-fire frequencies of birdsong. His vocal cords had literally been programmed for the wrong species. When Vanya was moved to a rehabilitation center, the staff were stunned. He could not understand a single word of Russian, yet he could communicate perfectly with the birds outside his window. Doctors called it Mowgli syndrome, but with a modern twist. Vanya was eventually moved to a psychological care center to begin the agonizingly slow process of becoming human. But his case serves as a warning. The human mind is a vacuum. If we do not fill it with culture, language, and love, it will fill itself with whatever it can find, even if that means losing its humanity to the sky. Case 3. Ivan Mishukov, the king of the strays. In the mid-90s, the streets of Moscow were a brutal landscape of post-Soviet collapse. For a 4-year-old boy named Ivan Mishukov, the safety of home was more dangerous than the freezing alleyways. His mother's boyfriend was a violent alcoholic, and his mother was rarely present. In 1996, at an age when most children are learning to ride a bike, Ivan made a choice. He walked out the front door and never looked back. He had no money, no food, and no shelter. In the Russian winter, this should have been a death sentence. But Ivan found a family that did not care about his name or his past. He found the dogs. Ivan understood something instinctive about power and loyalty. He began begging for scraps near a local bakery. He did not eat it all himself. He shared his earnings with a pack of feral dogs. This was not just a boy following dogs. This was a boy leading them. In exchange for the bread, the pack provided Ivan with something he had never known: absolute protection. They slept in a huddle to keep him from freezing. They guarded his territory, and most remarkably, they acted as a security detail. If the police or social workers tried to approach Ivan, the pack would growl and snap, circling the boy like a high-value asset. It took the Moscow police 3 attempts to rescue Ivan. The dogs fought back with a ferocity that stunned the officers. Eventually, the police had to use a decoy, leaving a trail of meat to lure the pack away so they could take the boy. Ivan had spent 2 years as the alpha of the pack. When he was brought into the station, he snarled. He smelled of the streets. He was 6 years old, and he had forgotten how to trust anything that walked on 2 legs. But Ivan's story has a twist that separates it from Oxana or Vanya. Because Ivan had lived with humans for the first 4 years of his life, his language window was already open. His brain had established the foundations of human social structures before he went feral. After just a few years of rehabilitation, Ivan did not just recover, he thrived. He went to school, graduated, and eventually joined the Russian army. He is the ultimate proof of the 4-year rule, a testament to how the early seeds of humanity can survive even the darkest winters, provided they are planted just in time. The shift in consciousness. For centuries, feral children were treated like scientific curiosities, specimens to be poked, prodded, and analyzed. But following the horrors of World War II, the world realized that curiosity without a conscience is a dangerous thing. In 1947, the Nuremberg Code was adopted. It established a revolutionary idea. voluntary consent. It means that a human being is not a laboratory animal. You cannot experiment on someone without their clear, free agreement. And more importantly, the experiment must be for the benefit of society, not just to satisfy a dark wonder about what happens when a child is left in the dark. But what about those who cannot speak for themselves? What about the children? In 1964, the Declaration of Helsinki stepped in. It mandated that for those who cannot give consent, a surrogate must act in their best interest. It shifted the focus from what can we learn from this child to how can we heal this child. Science was finally forced to put the human before the data. By 1979, the Belmont Report solidified the three pillars of modern research: respect for persons, beneficence, and justice. It ensured that the burdens of research are not simply forced upon the vulnerable or the poor. These laws are the reason why the forbidden experiment stayed forbidden. They are the invisible shield that protects the next generation from the curiosity of the mad scientist. But while these laws stopped the experiments, they could not stop the tragedies. As we have seen, the wild still finds its way in. And as we will see in Part 2, sometimes the most dangerous place for a child is not the forest. It is the laboratory itself. Let's continue. Case 4. Gua and Donald, the ape and the child. In 1931, psychologist Winthrop Kellogg wanted to settle the nature versus nurture debate once and for all. He did not want to find a child in the wild, he wanted to bring the wild into his home. To do this, he needed two subjects, his infant son Donald and a 7-month-old chimpanzee named Gua. Kellogg's hypothesis was radical. He believed that if an ape was raised exactly like a human, it would eventually acquire human behaviors, social cues, and perhaps even speech. For 9 months, Gua and Donald were treated as biological siblings. They were dressed in the same clothes, fed at the same table, and given the same kisses before bed. At first, the experiment seemed like a success for the nurture camp. Gua was actually outperforming Donald. She learned to use a spoon faster. She responded to verbal commands better than the human infant. She was becoming, for all intents and purposes, a civilized ape. But then the mirror flipped. While Gua was slowly mimicking humans, Donald was rapidly mimicking the chimp. He was not just playing with Gua, he was identifying with her. He began to communicate through grunts. He began to bite people. And most alarmingly, he stopped attempting to speak English. Winthrop Kellogg abruptly ended the experiment after 9 months. The official reason was scientific completion, but the reality was much more personal. Kellogg realized that by trying to lift the ape, he was inadvertently degrading his own son's development. The human brain, in its desperate need for social symmetry, had chosen the most interesting peer available, even if that peer was a different species. Gua was sent back to a primate center, where she died less than a year later, unable to reintegrate with other chimps. She had become a stranger to her own kind. Donald eventually regained his language skills, but the Kellogg experiment remains a chilling warning to science. When you stare too long into the wild starts to stare back. The scientific takeaway. The Kellogg experiment proved that human children are hardwired for imitation. We are the most adaptive learners on the planet. But that adaptability is a double-edged sword. We are a blank slate only for a short time, and whatever is written on that slate first, whether it is a mother's voice or a chimp's bark, becomes the foundation of our reality. Case 5. Jeannie Wiley, The Room of Silence. In November 1970, a nearly blind mother walked into a Los Angeles welfare office looking for disability benefits. Beside her was a girl who looked no older than 6 or 7. She was pale, weighed only 59 pounds, and could not speak. When the social workers looked closer, they realized the horrifying truth. The girl was not 6, she was 13. Her name was Jeannie. For over a decade, her father had kept her privatized from the world. She was strapped to a potty chair by day and to a sleeping bag by night. If she made a sound, her father would growl at her like a dog or beat her with a piece of wood. She had not been raised by animals. She had been raised by a monster who treated her like a prisoner of war. The forbidden experiment begins. Once Jeannie was rescued, she became a sensation in the scientific community. To linguists and psychologists, she was a clean slate. She was the forbidden experiment come to life. A team of researchers, including linguist Susan Curtis, rushed to see if Jeannie could still learn to be human. At first, there was hope. Jeannie was hungry for the world. She learned names for things: blue, orange, mother. She discovered music. She discovered colors. For a moment, it looked like the human spirit was indestructible. But as the months turned into years, the team hit a wall of silence they could not break. Jeannie could learn vocabulary, but she could not learn grammar. She could say applesauce buy store, but she could never grasp I went to the store to buy applesauce. This was the tragic proof of the critical period hypothesis. Because Jeannie's brain had been deprived of language until age 13, the neural pathways required for complex syntax had literally withered away. The biological window for language had slammed shut. She was trapped in a permanent present, unable to bridge the gap between simple words and complex thought. The tragedy of Jeannie did not end with her biology. It ended with our failure. When the government funding for the Jeannie project ran out, the scientists were forced to walk away. Jeannie was moved from foster home to foster home, some of which were reportedly as abusive as the one she was rescued from. The girl, who was a scientific treasure, became a ward of the state. She reportedly stopped speaking altogether after being beaten in a foster home for vomiting. Today, Jeannie Wiley remains in an undisclosed adult care facility in California. She is a ghost of a girl who proved that while science can observe a tragedy, it cannot always heal it. We have looked into the eyes of the kennel, the aviary, the pack, and the silent room. These 5 orphans weren't born broken. They were born with the same potential, the same curiosity, and the same biological blueprints as you or I. But their stories reveal a haunting truth. Humanity is not a default setting. It is a fragile inheritance. We are social creatures by design. Our brains are not built to grow in a vacuum. We are the only species on Earth that requires a cultural womb, years of storytelling, touch, and language to fully become what we are meant to be. Science calls it the critical period. It is the biological clock that dictates our development. We've seen that if you miss the window for language, the door to complex thought may stay locked forever. If you miss the window for touch, the ability to trust may never form. These primal orphans are a mirror for the rest of us. They show us that every hello, every bedtime story, and every hug is a biological act. We are literally wiring each other's humanity every single day. We privatize these children from society, sometimes by accident, sometimes by malice, and sometimes in the name of a science that had forgotten its heart. But in doing so, we learned the most important lesson of all. Without each other, we are just another predator in the woods. We are human, only because someone else was human to us first. The stories of Oxana, Ivan, and the others are survival stories. They show us that when the human world fails, the natural world steps in. These children didn't lose their souls. They simply traded their humanity for the instincts of the pack. They adapted. They survived. They became mirrors of the wild. But there is another side to this story. A side where there is no forest to hide in, no pack to offer warmth. A side where isolation isn't an accident of neglect, but a calculated scientific choice. In Part 2, we go inside the laboratory to witness the forbidden experiment. From the doctors who raised apes as infants to the 13-year silence of Jeannie Wiley. We are entering the lab. Stay tuned. Part 2 drops in 3 days. You won't want to miss what happens when science loses its heart. I'm Reveela. If you found this deep dive valuable, consider subscribing for more journeys into the archives of the unknown. Until next time, stay curious and stay human.